Welcome back to War Manual ***. Picture the hum of a data center, where algorithms wage a silent cyber war. Now, picture the scratch of a reed pen on ancient parchment, recording the history of an empire. Between these two sounds, separated by 2,500 years, lies the key to understanding one of the most dangerous conflicts of our time. The confrontation between Israel and Iran dominates the headlines as a modern struggle for power, nuclear technology, and regional influence. But that is only the surface layer. Beneath it, there is a deep current, a historical memory thousands of years old that shapes every strategic decision, every threat uttered, every attack plan. This is a war fought not only with drones and missiles, but with memory. A war where national trauma, millennia old, is a more powerful motivator than any modern political ideology. This is not a video about religious prophecy. It is a geopolitical and strategic analysis of how the complex, ancient relationship between the Jewish people and the Persian Empire, recorded in detail in the pages of the Bible, still echoes uncannily in the halls of power in Jerusalem and Tehran. To decode today's headlines, we must first decipher yesterday's history. Part 1. Persia, the protector, the architect, and the existential threat. In today's simplistic narrative, Iran and Israel are eternal enemies. History, however, is far more fascinating. The first major recorded interaction between these two peoples is not one of conflict, but of liberation and reconstruction. In the 6th century BC, after conquering Babylon, the Persian Empire, under its founder Cyrus the Great, inherited a captive Jewish population. The policy of the Babylonians was one of oppression and exile. Cyrus's policy was a masterstroke of ancient statecraft. Instead of continuing the oppression, he issued what is now known as the Edict of Cyrus. This decree, celebrated in the biblical Book of Ezra, not only allowed the Jews to return to their homeland, Judea, but also ordered the return of the treasures of the Temple of Jerusalem and funded, from the Persian treasury itself, the rebuilding of the Holy Temple, which had been destroyed. In the book of Isaiah, Cyrus, a pagan king, is exalted and called God's anointed one, a title of immense weight. Geopolitically, Cyrus's strategy was brilliant. By reversing the policies of his defeated enemy, he created a loyal population. On the volatile western border of his empire, a friendly buffer state. For nearly 2 centuries under Persian rule, the Jews enjoyed autonomy and protection. Figures like Nehemiah, a high-ranking Jewish official in the Persian court, were sent with imperial authority to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. This was the era of the Persian peace, a period of symbiotic coexistence. But the Bible, in its complexity, also presents us with the archetype of the existential threat that can emerge from the same center of power. In the Book of Esther, set in the Persian capital of Susa, the story shifts dramatically. Haman, the Grand Vizier to the Persian king Xerxes, develops a deep hatred for the Jewish people and convinces the king to sign a decree for the complete extermination of all Jews in the empire, young and old, women and children, in a single day. What the story of Esther symbolizes is the precariousness of a minority's existence, even within a seemingly benevolent empire. It demonstrates how central power can be manipulated by an individual or a faction to turn protection into persecution. Haman's threat was not a conventional war. It was a plan for genocide, a sudden, state-sanctioned, total annihilation. It is the memory of this duality that defines Israel's strategic perception, Persia as the source of its salvation, and potentially of its destruction. Let's fast forward to the 20th century. The relationship between Israel and Iran, the geographic and cultural heir to Persia, was again one of cooperation. Before the 1979 revolution, Iran, under the rule of Shah Reza Pahlavi, and Israel were strategic allies. This alliance was based on Israel's periphery doctrine, seeking partners on the non-Arab edges of the Middle East to counterbalance the hostility of its immediate neighbors. Iran was a crucial oil supplier to Israel, and the two nations shared military intelligence and cooperated against common adversaries like Arab nationalist movements and the Soviet Union. The Islamic Revolution of 1979 was the cataclysm that reversed this landscape. Ayatollah Khomeini did not just enact a political change, he imposed a cosmological one. His ideology was pan-Islamic and radically anti-imperialist. The Shah was seen as a corrupt Western puppet, and Israel, as the United States, the great Satan, key ally in the region, was therefore seen as an illegitimate extension of that same imperial power. Overnight, Israel, the little Satan, went from strategic partner to theological enemy, a cancerous tumor whose very existence was an affront to Islam. The new Islamic Republic adopted the export of the revolution as a pillar of its foreign policy. The goal was to spread its ideology and challenge the established order. Supporting anti-Israel groups became the primary tool for this, beginning with the formation and funding of Hezbollah in Lebanon in the early 1980s. For Israel, the rhetoric from Tehran that calls for the country to be wiped from the map, the Holocaust denial from Iranian leaders, is not just inflammatory political speech. It is the literal, terrifying echo of Haman's threat, now potentially amplified by modern technology. The Israeli perception is not of a conventional geopolitical rivalry, but of an enemy ideologically committed to its annihilation, originating from the same geographic power center that almost achieved it millennia ago. This deep historical memory is the foundation upon which the military doctrines of both sides are built today. Israel's national security strategy can be summarized by the promise of never again. This promise, forged in the ashes of the European Holocaust, is reinforced by the biblical memory of Haman. It manifests militarily as the Begin Doctrine, established in 1981 when Israel preemptively destroyed the Acerric nuclear reactor in Iraq. The doctrine is clear. Israel cannot, under any circumstances, allow an enemy regime that threatens its existence to acquire weapons of mass destruction. The entire campaign of sabotage, cyber attacks, and targeted assassinations against the Iranian nuclear program is a modern application of this doctrine. Israel's obsession with breakout time, the time Iran would need to assemble a nuclear weapon after deciding to do SIS, the modern manifestation of the fear of a Haman with an atomic bomb. On the Iranian side, the strategy is in asymmetric warfare with imperial echoes, knowing it cannot win a conventional war against Israel or the US. Iran adopts the ancient Persian strategy of controlling the periphery to pressure the center. It has built what it calls the axis of resistance or ring of fire, a network of proxy groups that encircle Israel. Hezbollah in Lebanon is the crown jewel, described by Tehran as its forward operating base, with an arsenal of over 150,000 rockets and missiles aimed at Israel. In Syria, Iran used the civil war to establish a land bridge and a second front. In Yemen, the Houthis give Iran the ability to threaten global trade in the Red Sea. It is a doctrine of containment and attrition, designed to bleed Israel on multiple fronts and deter a direct attack. The conflict between Iran and Israel, therefore, is a war fought on multiple chessboards and across multiple eras simultaneously. It is a struggle for regional dominance, but also a clash between two of the world's most ancient civilizations, burdened by the weight of a shared history of both cooperation and existential threat. The biblical narratives are not, in this context, just religious stories. They are foundational documents that codified a relationship of duality, the potential for mutual protection and the potential for total annihilation. The modern tragedy is that, today, only the latter half of that memory appears to be active. The leaders in Tehran and Jerusalem operate under the immense weight of this history. Their decisions, though justified in the language of modern geopolitics, are profoundly influenced by national identities forged in narratives of exile, liberation, siege, and survival. The world analyzes the military hardware, the missiles, and the fighter jets, but perhaps the most potent weapons in this conflict are the ancient stories. These two nations tell themselves about who they are, who their enemies are, and what they must do to ensure that never again is a reality. The ghosts of Cyrus, the liberator, and Haman, the annihilator, still haunt the halls of power in the Middle East, and the world watches, waiting to see which one will prevail. Do you believe ancient history is the key to understanding modern conflicts, or is it just a convenient excuse for current ambitions? Discuss your strategy in the comments. If this deep analysis has given you a new perspective, leave a like and subscribe to War Manual. Knowledge of history is the first step to understanding war.